Divorce lawyers of Reddit, what's the most screwed you've seen someone? Hello and welcome to Robots Reading Reddit. Today we are doing more lawyer stuff. Enjoy. I used to be a divorce lawyer, but it was not something I was proud of, plus the partner I worked for was such an a-hole. I was the 11th associate that worked for her in 10 years. We used to go through 2 to 3 secretaries a year. Couple screwed up cases I remember. Our client and his wife were Mormon. During the divorce she used to tell him that he had to give her what she wanted in the divorce because they were sealed in the church and would be spending eternity together. We had to fight him not to give her more than she deserved. Represented the wife of a minor celebrity and said celebrity would file for divorce regularly when she acted up. Once he determined she was behaving as he liked, he's cancelled the divorce. Rotten bastard. My mother divorced my dad when I was like 2 years old. They had bought a house together and my dad's family offered her fair value to buy the house from her. She denied the offer and puts it up for sale publicly. My dad's family buys it for 40% less than what they offered my mom in a public bidding auction. I've worked as a legal assistant for 2 family law attorneys for the last 8 years. One of the cases that made me the angriest was a man who cheated on his wife when she had cancer. He then leaves his wife and attempts to hide all his assets while she's undergoing chemotherapy. Fortunately, my boss is a badass. She teamed up with a forensic accountant and they took him to the cleaners. He even had to pay the forensic accountant's bill and the attorney's fees. I met a girl in college who was not incredibly bright and was suddenly in a blind panic to make money. The reason was she had been kicked out of the place she was staying and needed emergency money. She had been kicked out because she was living with her boyfriend in his house while his wife was in the hospital due to brain cancer. So when she came home, still very much not likely to live long, he booted this 19-year-old out of his house with her. You can move back in when she dies. His wife beat cancer, came home, was receiving mail for a strange name and eventually tracked her down on Facebook. From there she found out that her 47-year-old husband had been dating a 19-year-old for just over a year, officially, likely actually longer, and put him through the ringer. One of my father's friends tried to solve the earth before getting divorced. A rental house and a cabin were deeded to relatives. The cars they drove every day were sold to other relatives for tiny sums. Stocks handed over to a trust for the children, etc. He even vanished a chunk of cash from the company he co-owned with his wife using funny invoices and stopped paying himself a salary, electing to burn through their personal savings for over a year instead. He learned that judges really hate when you try to hide or intentionally diminish assets, and they will absolutely refer you to prosecutors for fraud. I don't think he did any jail time in the end, but his ex-wife got everything, plus the satisfaction of firing him from his own company. The couple that previously owned my house did that. Not sure which one went scorched earth though. I was renting through a property management company. Then one day, I got a letter from the management company saying that I could not renew my lease as the house was entering foreclosure. I freaked as I liked this house and wanted at least a couple more years before buying. Well, I went online to search and found that not only was it being foreclosed upon, it was bought at county auction a couple months prior. It was a done deal. I called the property management company to set up some viewing of new homes, and the representative gave me some more details. Basically the couple had about 10 homes as investment properties, but they are going through a divorce. Whoever handled the finances stopped paying all the bank loans and property tax. The property management company had 10 families going through the same shit I did. I actually really liked the home. Wish I knew it was going to auction as I would have been there to bid. What ended up happening was I met the new owner who showed up at my doorstep telling me he owned the house. We spoke, I got his details, and ID and verified he was the new owner. He wanted to flip it, assuming it was a trashed rental house, since he bought from auction site unseen. We made an agreement that I would buy it as long as prices worked out in each of our favor. I paid rent to him during that time, and 6 months later we closed. But holy crap, whoever was the finance handling person of that couple in the divorce threw away 10 houses and probably hid the rent money income during the time they did not pay banks/taxes just to screw over the other person. I regularly get mail for them, lots of court notices which I have to return to sender. Always with Mr. or Mrs. last name, from a law firm or the county. Husband and wife are getting divorced after multiple attempts to reconcile. Husband is an attorney, though not family law. One of the attempted reconciliations includes wife losing some weight and sending husband some sexy/naked pictures. Once divorce litigation started, husband sent these pictures to wife's minister father asking if he knew what a whore he raised. During litigation, husband also drove around at night with their 2 small children in the car to find wife's car at a friend's house and pour airplane acid. Yeah, apparently it's a thing all over wife's hood. I'm not a divorce lawyer, but we once went to our open court with uni, and it was a divorce case. Our whole class was there watching them get divorced. It was a Dutch business guy and his Eastern European wife. She was talking about how he forced her to do anal and BDSM against her will. Their children were also there watching, and I remember feeling so bad for the kids. They were like 12 and 15, and not only did they have to watch their parents divorce, they had to hear about their father's fetishes that he forced on their mother, while an entire class of uni students was watching along gasping, like we were watching a movie. The lady was crying while she was talking about all his fetishes that she absolutely hated. Judge asked if he ever was violent, and she said he slapped me on my face and ass, but only during sex, but I didn't want it. I remember seeing their 15-year-old daughter, completely red face and eyes filled with tears, that she tried to hold in. Looked like she wanted to bury her head into the sand. Felt so terrible for that girl. Meanwhile, the girl next to me kept pushing her leg against mine every time this lady spoke a word, like OMG, did you hear that shit? My favorite divorce story of all time. My buddy meets girl, gets married, la-dee-da. 6 months later, she runs off with another dude. After a couple months, my buddy filed for divorce. He told her, listen, we've been married 6 months. Let's do an uncontested divorce, since you haven't worked or anything, and I own everything, and did before I met you. She puts up a fight, and eventually comes to. I had a car coming into this marriage, and I'm leaving with one. She sold her car for some dumb stuff. He offers her the truck, 10 years old with 150k miles, but meticulously maintained. She said nope, so off to court they go. She got zip, nada, empty-handed. My favorite justice boner of all time. I offered my ex 6 figures in stock, literally more than half of what I had aside from my house, which I bought before marriage. He thought he deserved twice that, and dragged the divorce out for a year. Our marriage was only 2.5 years, so the nonsensical divorce lasted basically half as long as the marriage. The judge awarded him half of what I offered him, but in cash. We made it all the way to trial with no kids, and not really any assets to divide, so the judge could not understand why we were there. We were only there because my ex wanted me to pay him an amount of money I literally didn't have, and he had the most incompetent attorney who harassed both myself and my parents throughout the process. If he had taken my original offer and not been a complete narcissistic prick, he would have basically had what he demanded originally, because the stock accrued value. I warned him that he wasn't entitled to as much when I begged him to take the offer and not put us through hell. It was pretty crazy. What ruined my justice boner is that my lawyer got the other half and then some. I also told my ex I would have rather have paid him over attorneys, but he's a dummy and always made terrible decisions. He consistently proved why I was divorcing him throughout the divorce. Friend of mine is a divorce lawyer. His favorite is the time the husband in a bitter divorce got some slimy lawyer and said he would outlawyer her and break the bank before giving her anything she wanted. This was in front of my friend, a lawyer. He looks at her and says, I'm working for you pro bono, free, from this moment forward. He looks back at them and says, I got all day. My wife's ex-husband tried this regarding child support. They agreed to work on a payment outside the court system because it would save both parties money. He told her he could afford $200 a month, maybe $250 a month, but that would be the absolute most he could do. She felt that was a little low, but told him to let her think it over and she would get back to him. He then spent the next several days asking her if the $200 figure would work because he knew someone who would type it up and then they could both sign. Ended up finding the state guidelines for calculating child support payments and plugging in all the numbers said his payment should be $800 to $850. She countered with asking for $400 because we didn't need the full amount to take care of the kiddo, buy him things he needs on top of doing fun things. Dude outright refused and said there was no way he could afford that much because it would impact his lifestyle too much. She pointed out he was offering less than a quarter of what the state said was the minimum amount he should be paying. Dude still refused. So then we had to get the legal system involved. Lawyers were hired, numbers were discussed in mediation and still he refused to budge. He was told by the mediator, if this goes to court the judge isn't going to care if it impacts your lifestyle. Mediation failed. A court date was scheduled. The date arrives, and he walks in with a brand new lawyer. The hearing got pushed because the new lawyer didn't have time to prepare for the case properly, having been hired like 2 days prior. Next court date they tried to bypass the custody hearing by pushing for a change in custody. That fell through because it was based on him having a picture of my wife standing by a mutual friend of ours. Next court date he walked in with a third lawyer and the date got pushed again. Rinse and repeat shit like that for 8 months before finally a hearing was held. It lasted long enough for the judge to look at the numbers involved. She set his child support at the $800+ figure and that was the end of things. It was the most ridiculous petty thing ever. He ended up paying over twice what my wife was asking for and managed to rack up of thousands in legal fees. My father-in-law had a stroke at the age of 46. He lost the use of his right arm and the ability to speak. Shortly after his stroke his wife decided they needed to move into a smaller house and sell their current one which was under his name and he had paid for. This also meant she was kicking out my brother-in-law and my wife, girlfriend at the time. She also decided to put down my wife's cat and get rid of the family dog since their new house wouldn't have pets according to her. She sold their house at a loss and immediately bought a new car with the money. My wife and her brother found a new place and my father-in-law and his wife moved in with one of her kids. After 6 months she dumped him at my wife's place and said I can't take care of him, we are getting a divorce. I don't know how it happened exactly, but she got half his money and a new car. She then went to all his family and lied to them and somehow convinced them that he was being abusive and didn't love her anymore. We tried to convince him to fight it, but he refused to do anything because he was so depressed. The lawyer ruled he was of sound mind, so he could make his own decisions. My wife is still upset about it and wishes he had tried to fight it, but he still loved his wife, so he didn't want to. He lives with us now, and he's doing a lot better emotionally. Divorce lawyer and mediator here. I once mediated the case of Neckbeard vs Tiger Mom. It must have started out as the perfect dream for Neckbeard. He landed a hot Asian wife, brought her to this country, but once that green card came through things changed. They had a daughter together, and the case was mostly about her. Tiger Mom had zero respect for this guy, and try as I might to maintain my empathy, I've never felt a greater urge to stuff another human into a locker. Two of his demands really stand out. He asked for the following injunction. Tiger Mom shall be enjoined from discussing Neckbeard's weight in a derogatory manner. Specifically, Tiger Mom may not refer to Neckbeard as fatty, tubby, pudgy, or Baymax. Normally I wouldn't take an offer like that to the other side. I'd normally help a guy come up with something more sensible, but everyone, including his lawyer, just could not take this guy seriously, so I wrote that out verbatim and trotted over to Tiger Mom's room. Of course she thought it was hilarious. She had a super thick accent and said, "My daughter call him Baymax cause he look like Baymax. I can't fix that. He have to fix that." There comes a point at the end of the day when everything is pretty much settled and people are dividing up the stuff in the house. Of course Neckbeard has a meltdown at this point and it's over a damn Nintendo Switch for the daughter. Tiger Mom made the very sensible proposal that the daughter take the Switch with her to each parent's house as she goes back and forth. Neckbeard freaks out and demands the Switch stay with him at all times because there's no way Tiger Mom can take proper care of it. Mind you, the attorneys are billing enough to pay for 3 Switches an hour at this point. I don't know what happened to the guy, but I do know calling him Baymax could land one lady in contempt of court after the most hilarious enforcement trial of all time, and he owns what's probably the most expensive Nintendo Switch in the world. Client's husband was an elected official, may still be, and signed a separation agreement. He fails to do anything he agreed to, so the wife sues, and he fights, saying that she forced him to sign. She shows emails where he negotiated the agreement and agreed on the final draft, and she showed emails where she tried to work with him on payments he owed her. He loses after making his staff member come into court, who testifies that he didn't think he was being forced to, and having a meltdown in court. Rumor was he threw his elected title around the judges away to get them to help him. A few months later he shows up to contest the actual divorce, citing the same stuff, and then says that she threatened to shoot him. Judge sides with the client. He has to now pay her like $6,000 or get thrown in jail. All could have been avoided if he responded to the emails she sent him. I can answer for a friend. His wife was divorcing him because he's an unreliable idiot. He figured that he was smarter than everyone, so he dragged out the process as long as he possibly could, making it as difficult as possible on her, scheduling and rescheduling meetings, not showing up, promising to do a thing, and then backtracking later, refusing to negotiate at all. I think his plan was to make the divorce so difficult on her that she would just stay married. He was also doing all this pro se, so her lawyer had to deal directly with him. Pro se means that he represented himself. Don't do that. It's really dumb. After a year of this, his wife had had enough. She told her lawyer to make it happen. So the lawyer set a date and the court served him notice of the divorce proceeding. She showed up to court and he wasn't there. So as the only party there, she got a very one-sided deal. She got their business, custody of the kids, the house and all contents, her car, and the bank account. He got his car, his clothes, and half the proceeds of the sale of the house when she decides to sell it. That's it. He found out about this when he called the court a week after it happened. What had happened is her lawyer served the divorce notice to an address in a different town with a similar name. Normally this would have been caught by his attorney, who would have received notice directly from the court, but since he had no attorney, there was no one other than him that the court could send it to. He finally hired a lawyer and tried to get the settlement tossed, as he claimed he was never served, but the judge said there was nothing he could do. Seriously, do not try to represent yourself. It slows everything down, and simple things are very easy to miss. That's it for today. I might revisit this thread in the future because I really enjoyed it. Take care and thanks for watching.